Hey y'all, this is the Actor's Guide to the End of the World podcast where we talk about acting in Hollywood in a way people understand. I'm your host, Ikon Song, and if you're listening to this or watching this, this episode is going to be a little different than our previous episodes. I'm going to be doing some traveling, going on a big trip. I can't wait to tell you guys all about when I get back. Until then, Rían and I decided to do a few episodes of Best Hits, our favorite segments from previous episodes. It'll give us a breather. And some of you are new here and might have missed it the first time, or you still might be catching up anyway. I will say we have some new fun stuff brewing for the podcast, so stay tuned. Follow us wherever you find your podcast. We're on Substack. We're on YouTube. Follow us on all social media at Actors Guide Podcast. So here's the plan for today. You're going to hear the time that Rían almost got scammed by a big tech company, dare I say, targeting the Irish. Unbelievable. So that was a hoot. We also have a juicy bit from episode 10 where Rían and I talk about money, finding that balance between juggling your side hustle and your passion, and which is extremely relevant today, and how mastering that might be unlocking a superpower for actors. So that's a good one. We also have an oldie but goodie from episode 3 where Rían and I talk about aha moments we've had in our lives, moments of clarity or frustration that got us to change our mind or how we thought about something. And in my case, it was, honestly, I don't want to spoil it, but I had to change my mind on something and it unlocked everything for me. So this is a very special episode. Hope you enjoy it. And now, a word from our sponsor. Has your agent forgotten your name? Been out of work for a while and need a boost to your clout? Uberazzi. It's like Uber for paparazzi. Now you can enjoy invasive press coverage everywhere you go with a touch of a button.
Getting Dunkin' Donuts in your sweatpants in the morning. Staggering drunk out of a club onto the sidewalk. Getting a Bieber smoothie at Erewhon.
Uberazzi. The only bad publicity is no publicity.
And I forgot to mention this before, but so I saw this ad on, these like market research things that you see sometimes. Right. And there was a market research thing popped up on Instagram, I think. And it was basically, are you an Apple user? Are you Irish? Are you an Irish person living in America?
You literally checked all the boxes?
I checked all the boxes. So it was a $750 stipend for participating in this thing. And then I got a phone call from this guy. And he's screening me. And he talks me through all these things. Now, I realized right after I did it, I was like, I just gave away a lot of information on the phone. But he was asking basically roughly how much, where, I'm from Ireland, I'm living in America, blah, blah, blah. What's your income roughly? Then he starts asking about my iPhone basically and how much storage I have and how much photos is on it and text messages or whatever. He goes, okay, you qualify for the study. And he said, you can do it at this place. It's 4 miles from you next week or whatever. And then I find out what the study is. And he goes, okay, so what'll happen is you'll come and you'll just plug your phone, you'll put your iTunes details in, and they will be able to read the contents of your phone. And I was like, what? And he's like, well, you can exclude a couple of things. Say you don't want some text messages read, you can exclude your text messages. And I was like, well, how many things can I exclude? He's like, 1 or 2, like maybe photos and text messages or notes and something else. And I'm like, God. So I just hand you, he goes, well, we don't keep the data. I'm like, yeah, cool. That sounds, yeah, I believe that. But included in it, because he sent me the email then, I didn't end up doing it, obviously, but he sent me the email then, and in it, I was reading the consent form. They can scan your biometric data from your photos, like your face and everything else. Not just yours, but also the other people in the photo with you. So they would be scraping data, and I'm sure this is an AI thing. I would be surprised if it wasn't.
That's crazy.
I'm sure they would be scraping data from your phone.
And you actually read the fine print.
To train AI. I read as much as I needed to read to not do it.
And they almost got you. That is crazy.
Nuts. But again, I think all of this AI stuff is just coming out. Right. Imagine $750 for all of your data. Everything. Your whole life is on your phone. If you're anything like me, your whole life is on your phone.
Right. Could have been just a scam, just taking advantage of people.
It could have been a scam, but I looked up him and I looked up the companies involved. And I think it was a legitimate, they were a market research company, but I think it was a legitimate study commissioned by, I think, Apple, as far as I know.
Unbelievable.
He hinted that it was Apple without saying it. So it may not have been. You know what I mean? It might have been trying to let you believe it was Apple when it was somebody else.
Targeting the Irish.
Yeah. Gullible Irish people in America like myself. Naive, looking for $750 to put in our pocket.
As if it's not hard enough being in America, they're targeting. We don't even have an idea of the repercussions of this. And now, obviously, we're really particular about giving away our email and social security. What about DNA? We have no idea. We haven't even thought about that.
We don't know where that goes.
I haven't thought about that until now. So what happens when, the small studio has all your biometric data and then goes out of business? Who are they selling it to? How are they going to keep it secure? How do you know some intern out of film school is not, screwing around 100%. With it?
And I'm just looking up stories about this 23andMe thing, and it looks like it says, okay, if you want to delete your data from 23andMe, log into your account under settings, go 23andMe data, select delete your data. Did anyone see that Ashley Madison documentary? Did you see that?
No, I didn't.
It was basically, they told people they were deleting their data. It was a site for people to cheat, basically. Right, yeah. If you remember the hype around it, they just lied about it, and the data
they didn't delete the data.
And that's what there was a data breach, and that's what brought them down ultimately. But they just lied. They told users could pay a premium apparently for double deletion or whatever. Like, we're definitely not keeping any of our data, and they were paying a premium for this, and they just lied. Their security was crap apparently, and all of this, and that's why everybody got.
Yeah, it got leaked.
Do you remember the leak? Yeah. If they're not protecting your data, why would you believe that hitting delete on their website?
That's a good point.
Dude. A friend of mine who's an actor, and a very successful actor, said that a change for him happened when he stopped asking his art to pay for his life. Where he had something on the side and he stopped depending on, he said it just took all the pressure off him. It took all the pressure off his creative work, and that helped him. For some people, I think it's probably the opposite. It's when they do kind of depend on it, maybe it gives them the impetus to double down. I don't know, but it's just an interesting idea that when art and money intersect, it complicates it. I don't know how you feel about that.
I feel like that could be a whole nother episode, but let's talk about that. I think that's brilliant. I found that to be the case for myself. This woman just put it so brilliantly. She's in computer. She's in the tech world. She basically said, people don't realize in the tech world where everyone's trying to create the next Facebook or the next Uber, all those people who are working tirelessly to launch that business, their income is coming from a different thing. Their income is coming from something that's not sexy, no one knows, and probably anonymous. But their heart and their passion is developing the next Facebook and Uber. What she said, and it hit me right between the eyes because I was like, this is exactly what actors need to know. She basically said, Silicon Valley had no problem making a distinction between income and, I forget what the word she used, but let's just use your passion. They make a distinction between your income and your passion. If you can separate those two, that's your superpower. They are unstoppable because they had no problem working on their Facebook when their income was coming from a crappy job that made them a lot of money, but they didn't care about. They didn't have any conflicted feelings about that, right? And guess what? Actors, we have trouble separating income and our passion. It's a big surprise that actors feel a lot more than Silicon Valley, right? But the point is if we could control that, if we could make our money completely separate from our passion and have no problem with that, we would be unstoppable. Our 9-to-5 job that makes us money and gets us comfortable every month, we can make that. We feel no shame about it, and we can devote all our time and our heart to our passion. If we were able to do that, if we were able to conquer that, we'd be unstoppable.
There's a couple of things that play into that. I think one of them is self-esteem. A lot of actors feel like if I'm not making my living from acting, I'm not an actor, The other practical consideration is time and the amount of energy you have. So depending on the job you work, you need it to be flexible if it's a part-time job or a survival job, you need it to be flexible because you need to be able to drop it and pick it up as needs be to take jobs, to do auditions. Yeah, and I've been on both sides of it. I currently don't have another job. You know what I mean? Like I'm currently just making my living from acting. But I don't know what the future holds. For me, that's the kind of the mental battle of not letting fear creep into what I do creatively. It's a tightrope. It's a tightrope to walk because not knowing where your next paycheck is coming from is tricky.
Right. Wait, I just want to be clear with what I'm saying. I'm just saying to emotionally try to remove ourselves from the stigma or the shame of needing a side job. So I just want to make sure that that's clear.
No, I agree with that. And the stigma and the shame, but that's a big thing for a lot of actors. And I think it can be reinforced by how people react when you say you're an actor, especially if they see you in a work environment, if it's at your side job. Like when I was bartending, I would try not to tell people I was an actor. You know what I mean? Because I didn't want to invite the conversation. If it came up, of course I would talk about it, but I would never lead with it. You know what I mean? I would never be like, well, I'm actually an actor, because to me, that seemed like that was rooted in low self-esteem. I know I'm doing this, but I'm actually something else. You know what I mean? Like,
touched on something that's really, really interesting. I think you're a perfect example because you have such a strong mindset. You didn't just move out to LA or just act 5 months ago. You and me are both in the privileged position of being in the game for a bit. We've seen the highs and the lows. We survived. We've had side jobs. We have dead end jobs. So as positive and as optimistic as you are, you admit that it's actually difficult to make that emotional disconnection between your income and your passion.
I don't know. For me, it was kind of it changed over time, and like the work that I put into mindset and stuff is now it's starting to pay dividends now. But for a long time, I was insecure about a lot of things. I was insecure about the fact that I never went to a full-time drama school. I started to work and did classes at night, and I was also in college. So I felt the kind of shame of that for a while. There's a lot of things that were so unnecessary and were kind of a hindrance to my progress, but I had to kind of figure that out along the way. So
I completely agree. I was very similar, to be honest. You say you figured it out. In what way? Like, was there anything concrete that you kind of worked through?
When I say I figured it out, I don't think I completely figured it out, but I certainly found a way to be more at peace with it. And I think how I got there personally was I started to do this kind of mindset work every day. And instead of seeing the lack of something, I started to just feel the sort of the joy of it or the abundance of, without getting, without trying to sound too wanky about it. You know what I mean? Like, I focused on the joy of it. I also was doing more of it. I was also in class more. I was also practicing more. I was more immersed in it. What happened then, a funny thing happened then, the acting work started to really kind of interfere with the job that I had been doing in a very real way. But what happened when I started to do the mindset work was the acting work I started to get would take me away from the job for longer. It was harder and harder for me to hold on to that. So then it became a sort of a leap of faith thing where I had to go, okay, well, if I can't keep this job, I have to let this job go. And if I have to let this job go, okay, then I'm just taking whatever comes next.
That's kind of like what I was getting at. I mean, this isn't going that far back, because obviously this is the time that we've known each other, and then also the work that at the studio when we met at Leslie Kahn. So this is actually fairly recent to make that shift. Sure. You're putting in the work. I don't want to gloss over that, because I think that's kind of like, this is really great for me to hear. This is possibly what a lot of other people are trying to figure out for themselves. It just so happens that we're going to holidays. It just so happens that it can be a very dreary time for a lot of actors. This is what most of us have experienced. Do you thrive on it? Does it destroy you? Where's your self-esteem fall? And then hopefully after years of grinding and putting in work, can we actually get in control of it? I don't know if this was ever going to pop up, but it just happened to be I was at my family's house, and I had flashbacks of me growing up. It was easier dealing with my family when I was across the country. I'm not going to lie. But I remember years back, really early on in the game, my sister said to me, and I told you, my dad came around, right? Because he really wanted me to go to math grad school. My sister literally said to me, she goes, hey, I think Dad's kind of embarrassed to tell people you're an actor. Ooh. Not even joking around. Here's the thing. My sister was watching out for me. And I think she wanted to watch out for me and protect me, but also let me know. This is the brilliance of being incredibly stubborn or just completely oblivious. It had very little effect on me. I had blinders. It didn't matter. I was working at Urban Outfitters. I don't even know where I was working. I was able to make that emotional disconnect between income and passion. And whether it was dumb luck or I was just stupid, I was able to have those blinders on and get through to the years where we could grow up and mature and be in a little more control of our mindset and be a little more positive.
Yeah. And I love that. And I think a friend of ours, someone you know, so put it beautifully, when he talked about waiting for the job to come save him, like waiting for that big role, that series regular role to change his life completely. He would, a car would come pick him up. He'd move a few blocks away to where the big houses were, and his life would be totally different. And when he stopped looking for that, like looking for the job to rescue him, and started to look at more what he could contribute to, the lives of the people around him, the lives of his family, how could he be of service? Things completely changed for him. And I think that's what it is. Who was I talking to? No, I was listening to an interview of one of the Daily Show hosts, and she was talking about Desi Lydic, and she talked about how she was always lived her life by like, I can't go on vacation because I have to wait and see, the job might need me. And then she got pregnant. She had auditioned for the Daily Show, and then I think she'd auditioned a few times, but then she got pregnant, and she was like, you know what? Fuck it, whatever. You know what I mean? This is just how it's going to be. And if they need me, they need me. And they called her, and she got the job, and she's like, flew to New York, and she talked to one of the producers, and she's like, just so you know, I'm pregnant. The producer's like, yep, cool, whatever, but it was when she let go of like, because I used to do that. I did that for years. We were talking about a lot of Irish students go on what's called a J1 visa to America when they're in college. It's like a student visa. They go over and get jobs and, act, basically drink their faces off and have a great time for 3 months. And I didn't do it because I had started acting, and I was worried that like, well, I can't leave because of the job. I think when you start living your life and going, you know what, I'm going to live my life anyway, I think it just shifts something where it's like, yeah, live your life. Don't put your life on hold waiting for something to happen. I think waiting is the worst possible place you can be. The worst possible state I can be in is waiting for something, whatever it is, waiting for something to happen, waiting for something to not happen. It's such a powerless place to be. And I think when you take yourself out of that and take back a little bit of agency back and go, no, I'm just going to live my life. It just balances everything a little bit better.
I love that. Just one thing, because I just realized this. So for those tracking, because my mind is blown from this conversation, because I realized that me and a lot of the stories that we're talking about are on polar sides of this. Me having those blinders on for so many years helped me in so many ways, but I realized having those blinders on was the reason I was sitting around waiting for so many years. So for all those years, okay, I realized, because that ties into a little bit about, a handful of episodes back, we talk about, we had a few moments in our lives that were life-changing, and I decided to create more stuff and get on YouTube and all that stuff. I realized I had blinders on for years, and that's what was stopping me from creating stuff and putting it on YouTube and doing all that thing, because I was so keyed in on, this is how I look at life. This is what I need. This is what I believe. And I was so resistant to the forces in the outside around me that it was protecting me emotionally, but I realized I was missing a lot of things. And so to put it on perspectives, like I needed to open up more. Some people can protect themselves a little bit more, but either way, there's a spectrum here. And I think that's what I learned after, recently from these conversations.
That's really interesting. There's a phrase and you'll hear sometimes in recovery where people say, I'm living a life beyond my wildest dreams. And when I was early on in sobriety or whatever, they used to drive me crazy because I was like, what? You obviously just don't have big dreams, pal, because I've got these big dreams. But I kind of understand it now because like when I zoom out and I look at my life, I go, I know I actually am living, like I get to be an actor. I get to be an actor in LA. I get to do what I love. I get to do it for money. I get to work with all these cool people. I've had all these experiences in my life as a result of it. It's brought me all around the place. I've traveled a lot. My dreams never look like how I think they will. And I think that's what it is. It's like beyond my wildest dreams. I couldn't have imagined the life that I have today. And I think that fuels the kind of, that fuels the transition away from feeling like the part-time job is dragging you down and, feeling shame about that. Like you have to. And there's another thing I've noticed is where people talk about, broke actors working in a bar, whatever. I'm like, the tenacity that takes to work, to put all of this time and money and effort into getting better at this thing, while also holding down a part-time job or sometimes a full-time job that involves long hours and shift work and trying to juggle things. A lot of people have families and kids, and there are all these considerations that go into this thing. So it's so disingenuous to talk about, that kind of idea of like actors being sort of losers, the broke actor all waiting to make it. What have I seen you? And that kind of shit where you're like, you don't understand what kind of tenacity and what kind of heart it takes to just stay in it.
I do feel like it's easy for other people to criticize because we're chasing after a dream and they wish they could. If you see comments on YouTube, if you see comments on Instagram, those are people at home clicking away, trying to, yeah, exactly. And something that we often say is ride the horse in the direction that it's going in. And you kind of have to be open to those signs. And I think, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm agreeing. I think, and I probably lean into those more than a lot of people would. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I take them quite seriously. For me, when I start to get in trouble is when I start to sort of circumvent those signs with me overthinking it and applying logic to it. Because logic doesn't always work out well for me. I don't know about you. What about you? Like, how do you make decisions? Tell me about the first decision you ever made and then just go forward from there.
It's funny because it didn't hit me until we were talking about it last week. My whole last year was, I basically flipped the way I thought about acting, internet, social media, and my role as an actor. I completely changed my mind last year.
Oh, yeah.
And
I don't think I knew this.
I know, exactly. So it kind of blew my mind because, so when we were talking about this idea of identity as an actor and you had an identity that maybe, you're an actor in LA, people were telling me, you know what, honestly, I think you should go on YouTube, do something on YouTube.
Yeah.
So for all those years, didn't think about it once. I had one friend who I thought I incredibly value her opinion. Highly intelligent. I'm talking about like grad school at UPenn, Ivy League and all that stuff. Worked at Google for years.
Yeah.
She was a YouTube frequenter. And I was like, quietly like, you watch YouTube, really? Right? So judgy.
I can only imagine your tone when you said that. So judgy.
But I'm like, oh, you watch YouTube? And I just hold my tongue.
YouTube.
She goes, you have no idea the depths of YouTube. There's a range of everything. There are brilliant people on YouTube. There are also silly imbeciles on YouTube. But she goes, YouTube is the future. This is where the youth are going to learn. You really? And she goes, I think you should be on YouTube. I think you have something to say. And I think people might want to hear it. I didn't even casually watch YouTube.
Yeah.
That moment, the next week, it changed my life.
Wow.
I literally started researching YouTube, saw what she was talking about. By the way, I also had experience editing. I was editing things for years before that. I had all the skills to do it. I just didn't want to do it. I was also kind of scared.
Yep.
The next month was the Super Bowl. I went to the Super Bowl. I documented everything, and I made that into a vlog. Yeah. And that was the first moment where I was officially on YouTube, and it changed my life. Huh. So it all just kind of snowballed from there because I started making videos for YouTube. No one was really paying attention, but it was fine because I was experimenting. I figured I might as well throw them on Instagram and social media because I was making them anyway. The strike happened. People started watching them and I was pleasantly surprised. And then someone asked me to host a Hollywood live event. And I'm like, I'm not a host. I'm an actor. But I did it anyway because I didn't have any good reason not to. And here we are hosting a podcast. Never would have considered a podcast 2 years ago. Absolutely never. And I'm completely indebted to my friend. And my point is I was so stubborn.
Yeah.
I needed one push over the edge. And it was also like resentment as far as like, oh, well, what else am I doing that's so important that I can't explore this? Right. It just hit me at the right time.
What was it about?
What was the judgment?
Yeah, what was the judgment? What's at the heart of it? Like, I think I understand it, but what's at the
idea of content creators or what have you, or YouTubers versus actors. Actors were trained to act. YouTubers were mostly personalities that were producing content. And it also just happened, they were becoming more famous than all of us. And so 100% I was resentful. I didn't want to address it. I didn't even want to think about it. After all these years, YouTube is completely changing the world. And by the way, it's like, I think it's number 2 for streaming besides Netflix.
I buy it. Yeah. I look at YouTube all the time now, and I didn't used to. My thing was, like, I thought people only did one thing. You know what I mean? When I'd look at successful actors, I go, oh, they're just actors. As I've aged and as I've seen more and more, people do a million things. Even the most successful, in fact, the most successful people are more likely to do a million things because they diversify and they're involved in this and they're involved in that. Some of them write books and they like a friend of mine who's a successful actor, Irish fella. He's had 2 novels published. He's directed movies.
Yeah,
he's directed TV, but he's primarily an actor.
Exactly. There you go.
But he writes and he does all these other things.
That's amazing.
And there are actors I know that are just involved in other stuff because it interests them and they're curious and like, so I've expanded my narrow focus on that too because I used to think, oh yeah, you just do the one thing.
Exactly.
And
that's
anything is a deviation from that is a kind of a betrayal of your goal.
Exactly.
That's brilliant. I didn't really know that. And by YouTube, do you mean specifically YouTube or do you mean all forms of like short, like social media? Does that apply to social media for you? Like,
yeah, it's all kind of lumped in the same thing.
Yeah.
Most actors aren't excited about social media.
Yeah.
The irony is we chose a profession to be in front of the camera, yet we feel uncomfortable expressing ourselves.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I kind of had to get over that too. And I was like, honestly, there's so many things going out there where it's like, do people really care? It's like, no one's focused on you.
Yeah. And that's the thing about judgment. You know, when people say no one's judging you, everybody's judging you all the time. That's what people do. I judge. Yeah. That's how we relate to the world. We judge it. It doesn't fucking matter. That's the secret. Who
that's a good point.
Everybody's judging you all the time. That's okay.
And how much do we overvalue it more than it needs to be?
Oh, totally. Yeah. It's overpowering sometimes the thought of other people's judgment.
One thing, just the icing on the cake, I also haven't drank in 6 months.
Incredible.
Obviously, that might come up later in conversation about, these things.
I know you've mentioned that, but I wasn't sure where you're at with it.
One of those things where it's like, hey, I'm busy enjoying the things that I'm doing. How about I just keep doing it and stay clear-headed while I'm at it?
Yeah. I mean, look, obviously I can attest to, I've been sober now 13 years and
that's amazing.
Changed my life. Absolutely changed my life. And maybe we'll go into that more detail in a different podcast. And I would have loved to have heard and seen your face when you were like, oh, YouTube, you watch YouTube. It reminds me, there was years and years ago in Dublin, on Talbot Street in Dublin, I was in a shop. And there was a guy there with his girlfriend and he had a kind of a long black coat and a scarf like thrown about his, over his neck. And his girlfriend or wife, but I think girlfriend, like was buying chocolate. And he gave her the most disapproving look. He just goes, oh, chocolate shishi. So is that, I imagine in my head, that was that kind of like disdain.
Chocolate shishi, huh?
And I presume her name was like Shifra or Siobhan or something like that. And it was pet name. It was like, that just made it for me. I was like, there you go, dude.
Wow. Judgy.
Yeah, so judgy. Chocolate shishi. But I was thinking, because in Ireland at the moment, there's a number of young, I say young because they're younger than me, but like they're probably in their 30s, actors who just do. I knew them first from like doing sort of front-facing camera sketches, but now they're all starting to work. Now they're all starting to work on TV. I'm seeing them pop up in shows. But I've admired their content for a long time, and I follow a bunch of them, like to shout them out in case they ever, come across us. But it's like Peter McGann, John Doran, Tony Cantwell, all of these guys, Hannah Mamalis, who I worked with on a short film with a pal of mine. And when I was home, I did a sketch with a friend of mine, Paul, and John Doran, one of these guys. I was... This is so embarrassing. This is so embarrassing, but I was actually kind of starstruck, and I don't get like that around famous people. But because I only knew this guy through like comedy sketches, and I was such a fan of his comedy, I was kind of I didn't speak.
That's amazing.
Which is so weird because I've met wildly famous people. You know what I mean? But
I think that brings up a great point. But I remember a long time ago, a friend who watched more YouTube than I did, and I kind of. Not surprisingly, I kind of judged him. So he said all these YouTube people that I was like, God, whatever. And he told me years ago, he goes, well, I feel like fame is different now. It's
like the democratization of fame.
Exactly. That had to be 6-7 years ago. And now look at where we are.
Yep.
I have to eat crow because I was like, wow, he was right.
You're right. I hadn't thought about that, but the nature of fame has changed. You remember like, first concert I ever saw was Michael Jackson.
Oh, wow. That's a good way to start out.
Yeah. I was 10 years old. It was 1992, I think in 92 or 94. I think it was 92. I think it was 10 years old. It was in Lansdowne Road in Dublin. And I begged my parents to let me go. Michael Jackson and Madonna and these people at that time were megastars. They were untouchable. There was a mystique about them that I don't think there is about anyone anymore, because it's...
I completely agree.
Taylor Swift is probably the most popular singer in the world in terms of fan base and everything else, but feels more accessible. Mm-hmm. Like Michael Jackson was mental, and Madonna was, these were elusive megastars. But I think today, fame is different.
Oh, 100%. We can have another podcast about that for sure. Not only is it all spread around, just imagine how many influencers on TikTok and Instagram that have a bajillion followers that you never heard of.
Oh, 100%.
And not only has fame spread around, it's going to quickly shorten where everyone's fame went from 15 minutes to 3.
Yeah.
It's going to live and die much quicker than it used to be. So I think the main point of what I realized and learned, being able to change your mind despite how resistant we are, whether it's fear of change or the unknown, I think that's what I just got rid of. And at this point, I'm looking for the other things that I can change my mind.
I think it's incredible that like somebody said something to you that changed your worldview. Mm-hmm. I think for me, certainly the last 2 years of my life have been entirely different from any other year before that.
Wow.
And that began for me with, among other things, with a breakup of a relationship. And it's not a comment on the relationship at all, but like that breakup just changed something in me, along with a lot of other things I had started with Leslie Kahn and her class and stuff like that. And it changed my approach to acting, but it also, my approach to life changed. And it didn't feel like I did it. It didn't feel like I was really responsible for it. I felt like it was just kind of handed to me. It was just sort of gifted to me and go, here's a different perspective on everything.
And the universe spoke, and then you received.
Oh my God, what a different way of living. And I've had the most amazing 2 years. It's it's been ups and downs and whatever, but it's been amazing. Like it's been,
awesome.
I've worked a lot more. I'm enjoying the work a lot more. I feel different. I relate, I relate to people. I don't know. Everything is different, but it's just amazing. It's a small thing. Like somebody said something to you about YouTube, and that just opened up. And it's so easy to sit in judgment or criticize, rather. It's so easy to criticize things, and can make you feel safe, and it can make you feel superior. Mm-hmm. But it's far more valuable to be curious and try stuff,
That's amazing.
Just go, all right. And I'm not preaching this from a perch of, what I mean?
No, you're preaching from experience.
Moral high ground.
I completely agree.
I have been judgmental. I've been dismissive. I've been all of those things. And I like living this way a lot more. And I like this version of me a lot more. So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, that's a great place to pin it there.
Yeah.
Well, that's our show, everyone. Hope you enjoyed it. If you get a chance, please leave a review, leave a like, maybe even subscribe. It really helps the podcast. And as always, we're wherever you find your podcast. We're on YouTube, we're on Substack, we're on all social media at Actors Guide Podcast. See you next week.